Ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves because what Trump just did to Cuba's communist dictator is something you would only expect from a 5D chess grandmaster wizard like our President Trump.
Today, for the first time, Cuba's dictator acknowledged talks with the United States after intense economic pressure from the Trump administration. Joining us now with more is Kevin Cork. Good evening, Kevin.
Evening, Charlie. There are actually three prongs to this Cuba story tonight that collectively seem to be pointing to a major change in the island in the not-too-distant future. On the one hand, the biggest news of the day is, as you pointed out, Cuba's President Miguel Diaz-Canel confirming today that his government is negotiating with the Trump administration and that talks are serious and sensitive. Now, those conversations signal a potentially historic and economic and strategic partnership with the U.S., which would be massive. By the way, the announcement comes as the island continues to struggle and suffer through some of its worst economic shock in history, thanks in part to the U.S.-led oil embargo, which has kept fuel from entering the country for about 3 months. The resulting lack of energy, food, and rolling blackouts leading to unprecedented protests, which have, frankly, called into question the leadership's effete grip on the island's enkindled masses. Now, the talks, if successful, could potentially lead to Cuba's biggest economic opening since the nationalization of its economy all the way back in 1961 in the wake of the Cuban Revolution. Perhaps not coincidentally, today the Cuban government announced the release of 51 people from the island's prisons as part of a Vatican-brokered deal. There have, by the way, Charlie, been multiple reports that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been engaged in direct high-level dialogue with a number of the island's top brass, including Raul Castro's grandson, Raulito. No confirmation of that from the State Department of the White House. Then again, no denial either. Charlie.
I've been hearing, as a little boy, I'd be hearing about Cuba. Cuba's a disaster, but I've been hearing so much about Cuba. But Cuba is in its last moments of life, as it was. It'll have a great new life, but it's in its last moments of life the way it is. And but our focus right now is on Iran, and we'll do that. I would say, what will you do? Take about 2 days off, Marco? No, he won't. Maybe an hour. He'll take 1 hour off, and then he'll finish up a deal on Cuba. That'll be an easy one. But it'll be the entire region that we're doing that. Many of you have come today and they say, I hope you can take care of Cuba because you've had problems with Cuba, right? You mentioned.
The regime that's been crushing that island for 67 brutal years is at death's door and literally imploding live as we speak. For the 8th straight night, Cuba is in total blackout. No electricity anywhere. Bakeries cooking bread over open fires like it's the Dark Ages. No fuel shipments in 3 months, and the communists are starving exactly like we knew they would. But today, the Cuban people finally snapped in the best way possible. They stormed straight into a Communist Party headquarters in Morón, dragged out the furniture and all their propaganda, and torched the whole building while screaming, "Libertad," and down with the dictatorship. This ain't 2021, ladies and gentlemen. This is the regime cracking and surrendering under Trump's pressure and strategic strength through strength leadership. The dictator who was threatening Trump just weeks ago is now on his knees, secretly begging Washington for talks and releasing 51 political prisoners like the coward he is. Freedom, Cuba. Freedom is on the way.
Such an important story. Is the Cuban regime entering its final chapter?
Thank God for that. And I agree with what the president is saying and what Marco, who happens to be my constituent, we're Cuban Americans from Miami. And what Trump is doing is what Kennedy never did. He imposed an embargo 65 years ago, only on paper, but never in practice. So Cuba is the epicenter, is the headquarters of evil in the Western Hemisphere. So we're going to be much better. The American people are going to be much better, and the Cubans in Miami.
So what do you want to see done here? Tell me about the backdrop. Explain to our audience what this regime is all about and what you want to see done.
Well, this is the Cuba. Fidel Castro wrote the manual on repression. 100 years from now, historians are going to look at Fidel Castro and say, this guy was able to supersede Lenin and Stalin because he not only was able to grab power, but to maintain it through repressive apparatus. Yeah. What Marco Rubio was saying is true. I mean, they don't have food, they don't have water, they don't have electricity. And Cuba had the highest per capita income in 1960. That's why Kennedy was so important. So Cuba, but not only that, is that Venezuela existed, Nicaragua existed because of Cuba, because Fidel was a genius at evil. And right now, they're ending those. Their days are numbered. Thank God.
Wow, and the people understand this.
Of course, the people in Miami, the people that I represent, and the people on the island. Remember that 2 years ago, you had hundreds of thousands of Cubans on the streets with this type of sign, which means L, which means libertad, freedom. And they were repressed brutally. Internet was shut down, obviously, like in Iran, because they don't want the regime does not want the international community to see what they're doing to their own people.
Wow.
But right now, Trump is daring to do, once again, the same thing he did with Venezuela. He's doing something that no other president since Ronald Reagan dare to do, which is to force these people to open up, to bring transparent elections, which is what happened Reagan with the Sandinistas.
Yeah.
And now this is the next time. So Trump is the next Reagan in the hemisphere.
Unbelievable.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Trump's masterclass geopolitics, cutting off the Venezuelan oil lifeline and watching these parasites beg and burn. It's glorious. It's the end of an era. And stick with me because I want to chat with you all about how it's all unfolding exactly. As always, like my show and subscribe. But to be honest with you, there's so much more to discuss and way more conversation to be had. And I only make one video per day. And my wife might as well. But sometimes days go by and she just doesn't get a chance to post or go live on YouTube. There are specific reasons for that, but I won't bore you with the details of how the YouTube sausage is made. And instead, I will invite you all to join in on the real conversation that's happening every day. Together, we can build better America. My wife and I are posting more and more and expanding on discussion and Discord. Virtual meetups in the works with lives that are not only more of what you want, the truth, but also brings you into the conversation in real time. Spaces are limited, but we are working to expand the seats. Click the link below, and we look forward to seeing you over there. This post here from Nicki Minaj really resonated with us both and struck a chord. So I want to quickly share and read it to you. And it says, X wins because they understand community, not just identifying the communities, but enhancing the actual community itself, enhancing the experience that allows the community to function completely outside of the overall population without feeling alienated from said population. Do you realize that's actually what's happening? Yet you still feel very much a part of the rest of the world via trending topics, hit tweets, etc. But that's what people actually want. People want to be in their own world while feeling that they aren't technically isolated from the real world, because society judges those behaviors, labels them as cults, fanatics, reclusive, you name it. Instagram did the opposite. They lose. Instagram essentially dismantled the community while trying to increase revenue. By removing chronological order of posts and focusing heavily on influencers and clickbait instead, they basically forced you to become a part of the overall community that no one actually feels comfortable in. By doing so, people feel lost when they go onto the app. They're looking for their tribe, but all they see is the digital version of a casino. Everyone's hustling, competing, overcompensating, and trying to figure out how to win at a game designed for them all to lose. Now, look, I'm not saying YouTube has gotten as bad as IG yet, but there will come a time. We all just want community, and as my wife would say, our tribe. If this matches your vibe, click the link and join us. Together, Democrats claim to be for and all about, and talked about too, but talk is cheap. Much like those who came before Hegseth, as he mentioned, standing at the podium and speaking the truth, This meme here really had me belly laughing yesterday as I visibly saw and looked at Karine Jean-Pierre as I read the satirical caption or description that said, I'm not going to get into the specifics. We've seen the videos, but the replacement Ayatollahs in Iran are literally doing backflips and cartwheels right now. Just like President Biden was doing last week when he landed that perfect triple backflip on the South Lawn after signing the infrastructure bill, or worse, and how Chris Murphy has selective amnesia.
I have great sympathy for our soldiers and our military leaders. They are being given directions by a senile old man who is losing his mind.
Listen, I'm somebody that's worked intimately with the president, right? So I know that he is ready for this campaign. I have seen how effective he has been up close and personal. Joe Biden is incredibly competent and he's incredibly effective.
Apparently, to Democrats, this is what strong leadership looks like, folks. Cartwheels of progress, backflips of diplomacy. The Iranian people are thrilled. The regime is energized. And if you say otherwise, you're just spreading disinformation. Next question, please. As she then immediately calls on the same reporter 3 times while pretending not to hear the follow-up about the Supreme Leader's walker, or having shat himself, or trusted a fart a little bit too much. But just like this meme here, not everyone will get this. And if you do, great. Hit that thumbs up. But if you don't, then drop a comment. And I'm sure the nice folks here, subscribe to my show, will help get you caught up to speed. But Sec War Pete Hegseth stared right at the press and went absolutely scorched earth, spelling out their insanity. And I honestly could watch those types of come to Jesus meetings all day. But not only that, Hegseth was a part of the media, albeit Fox News, but he knows what he's talking about. And I, for one, look forward to a future where he speaks freely, independently, and perhaps with 2 fingers of Blanton's neat and a splash of water, some George T. Stagg maybe, or just a cold beer or 2. We are the media, and it's our duty and responsibility to report the truth. And I have to tell you, what's happening right now on the island of Cuba is absolutely insane and could be the beginning of the end for the communist regime. While the world is focused on other hotspots, Cuba has just entered its 8th straight night without power. Some places have been dark for over 20 hours a day. Bakeries are literally cooking bread over open fires because there's no electricity. No fuel shipments have arrived in 3 months. People are banging pots in the streets of Havana in protest. And right now, brave Cubans in Morón, in the Ciego de Avila province, have stormed and set fire to a Communist Party headquarters. They threw rocks, dragged out furniture, and burned it in the street while chanting Libertad and down with the dictatorship. 5 arrests so far, but this is not the 2021 protests anymore. This is the regime cracking under pressure like we've never seen before.
Que en correspondencia.
All right, y'all, let's hit pause for a second because this matters and it's really important. We talk a lot on this channel about taking control of your life, making smart choices, and not letting the system overwhelm you. But when it comes to navigating Medicare, it can feel like you're wading through a swamp of total confusion. Plans, coverage, costs, deadlines, you name it. And that's where Chapter steps in. They're not just another company. They're the real deal when it comes to free Medicare help. Chapter's team of advisors has helped thousands of people across the country find the right Medicare plan, and they do it with one goal in mind: putting you first. No fees, no pressure, just honest guidance to make sure you're covered without breaking the bank. Big insurance companies have their own agendas, but Chapter's got your back, fighting to get you the plan that works for you. So if you're approaching Medicare age or helping a loved one figure it out, don't go it alone. Call Chapter today at 270-467-2426 and start getting the clarity you deserve. Because at the end of the day, protecting your health and your wallet, well, that's not just smart. It's living life on your terms. And here's even more proof it's blowing up off and online. The dictator, Diaz-Canel, himself just admitted they're in secret talks with the Trump administration in Washington, possibly involving Raul Castro and even Vatican help. As a goodwill gesture, they're releasing 51 political prisoners. This is huge because Cuba hasn't talked directly to the U.S. like this in years. And there was just only one man who could orchestrate such a masterclass, and that man is Donald Trump.
En correspondencia.
And allow me to paraphrase here in my somewhat broken translation, but basically he says, in correspondence with the consistent policy of the revolution under the direction of the Army General Raul Castro and myself, Cuban officials have recently held conversations with representatives of the government of the United States. These conversations have been oriented towards seeking solutions by way of dialogue to the bilateral differences that we have between the two nations. There are international factors that have facilitated these exchanges. The objective of these conversations is, first of all, to identify the bilateral problems that need solutions based on their gravity and impact, and on the other hand, to find solutions for these problems. This is a very delicate process that we are addressing with a great sense of responsibility and seriousness. He continues by stressing that the talks are still in the initial phase, must be based on equality and full respect for each country's sovereignty, self-determination, and political system, and are aimed at creating spaces for understanding and cooperation while moving away from confrontation. He also references the severe energy crisis, no fuel shipments for more than 3 months, as part of the current context. But the fuel crisis is the killer here, thanks to Trump's moves, of course. And there's been zero oil coming in from Venezuela, or anywhere else for that matter. Remember, Trump captured Maduro and seized control of Venezuelan oil flow. And now, with what's going on in Iran, he's basically locked down 80 to 90% of the key global oil routes. And this just in, Trump says that many countries will be sending warships to help keep the Strait of Hormuz clear, especially those who are affected by it. And who all is the most affected? Well, I'm glad you asked. Importers like China and India, followed by the UK and France. I'll be extremely interested to see which nations send warships to keep the Strait of Hormuz clear, because the more global cooperation Trump's able to recruit, the better the optics. Granted, the mainstream will never report on it, but if other nations assist, it will show that Trump was not the only one who wanted the Iranian regime to be eliminated. And we are no longer the world police, which some say is a good thing. But now, get this. Trump just invited China to send warships to protect the waterway China is using to replace the dollar. Now, I've read this Truth Social post carefully, and I must say this is the most strategically loaded sentence of war. And I quote, "Hopefully China, France, Japan, South Korea, and the UK and others that are affected by this artificial constraint will send ships to the area so that the Hormuz Strait will no longer be a threat by a nation that has been totally decapitated." End quote. The invitation is a trap. Every possible Chinese response damages China. If Beijing sends warships, it legitimizes an American-led coalition, subordinates Chinese naval power to U.S. command architecture, and abandons its diplomatic neutrality with Iran. The country currently offering China yuan-only passage through the strait that everyone else is locked out of. China loses its shadow fleet advantage, its discounted Iranian crude, and its SIPs leverage in a single deployment. If Beijing refuses, it confirms what Washington wants the world to see, that China is willing to let the global economy burn rather than contribute to the security of the waterway that carries 45% of its own crude imports. every nation paying $96 a barrel while China pays less through yuan-settled shadow fleet deliveries will note who showed up and who didn't. Yeah, the free rider narrative writes itself, and America writes the next chapter of dollar dominance with it. Trump named 6 countries. 5 are allies or partners. Japan is signing Global Dome in 5 days. France operates from Djibouti. The UK from Bahrain. South Korea has direct Hormuz energy exposure. Their participation is expected. China's participation is the question, and the question is the weapon. While 16 million barrels of Iranian crude have transited to China since the 28th of February through shadow tankers settling in yuan, while SIPs processed $24.5 trillion in last year alone at 43% growth, while Iran offered to reopen the strait exclusively for yuan cargo, Trump posted a sentence that forces China to choose between its shadow economy and its public legitimacy. This is zero sum for Xi. Ladies and gentlemen, Trump has already told the entire world, we have already destroyed 100% of Iran's military capability, but it's easy for them to send a drone or two, drop a mine, or deliver a close-range missile somewhere along or in this waterway, no matter how badly defeated they are. The President of the United States just acknowledged that total military victory does not equal total waterway security.
You just said it is a little excursion, and you said it is a war. So which one is it?
Well, it's both. It's both. Using the same weapon, the exact same weapon that we use against the drug dealers in the water. We have, as an example, we had tremendous drugs pouring in through the waters, through the sea, and now we have almost none. It's down 97% through water. Now we'll do it through land. The land is easier than water.
Of Iran's ballistic missile launches destroyed as well. And let's not forget, we have effectively begun wiping out Iran's Navy.
Yeah, it'll be, if those numbers continue, if that's a trend and they're being degraded like that, we could really look forward to potentially declaring victory, in very short order, which I think would be a victory for the president.
Yeah, without a doubt. And a victory for the world,
But Iran's military is destroyed, sure. However, the coastline is not. A defeated nation with a 33-kilometer shoreline, $500 mines, and $20,000 drones can deny passage through the world's most important choke point indefinitely because the weapons of denial are cheaper than the weapons of dominance. And in the meantime, the United States will be bombing the hell out of the shoreline, is the official word from the White House. Bomb the coast, shoot the boats, and hope that 6 nations send warships to escort tankers that have no insurance, no P&I coverage, and no private sector willingness to transit a waterway the president himself admits the defeated nation can still threaten. The coalition call is not about Iran, though, folks. Iran's military is destroyed. The coalition call, hear me out, is about the world that emerges after Iran. If America escorts the tankers alone, the strait reopens under American control and dollar pricing survives. But if a coalition escorts them, the strait reopens under international consensus and the yuan for Hormuz proposal dies. And, well, if nobody escorts them, then what is behind door number 3? Well, it's simple. The strait stays closed and China's shadow fleet is the only commerce moving through it. Trump's not asking for help. He's asking every nation to declare which monetary system they want the strait to operate under when the war ends. The warships are the ballot, the strait is the polling station, and the currency is the vote. Simply put, this is Trump's masterclass in geopolitics. But as for Cuba, Donald Trump cut off the lifeline to Cuba's regime. Russia and China can't deliver fast enough, and now the island is down to fumes. No electricity, no gas for cars nor generators, economy shrinking 4%, food prices through the roof, eggs basically worth their weight in gold. People are fleeing away any way they can, and the ones staying are done waiting. Now, to understand why this moment feels so massive. Let's zoom out and talk about everything that makes Cuba special, because this isn't just another random country collapsing. Cuba is the stunning archipelago of over 1,200 islands with some of the most beautiful beaches in the world, like Varadero, crystal clear water, white sand, and that classic Havana vibe with colorful buildings that look like they're straight out of the 1950s. You still see those old American cars everywhere, the Chevys and Fords from before the revolution, because the embargo and the system forced people to keep them running for decades. It's a symbol of survival and ingenuity. The culture is electric, salsa, rumba, incredible music pouring out of every street. Baseball is basically a religion. World-famous cigars like Cohiba and Santeria, spiritual traditions mixed with vibrant street parties. The people are resilient, welcoming, and some of the most beautiful and passionate you'll ever meet. Despite everything, they throw parties and keep that spirit alive. But here's the flip side that explains why it's all falling apart now.
Thank you very much. I've had a lot of offers, and sadly, it's all been very recently, to go into Cuba on deals, business deals, real estate and other deals. And I've rejected them on the basis that I will go when Cuba's free. As you know, and the people in this room know better than anyone, putting money and investing money in Cuba right now doesn't go to the people of Cuba. It goes into the pockets of Fidel Castro. He's a murderer, he's a killer, he's a bad guy in every respect. Castro's jails are full of dissidents, as you know very well. His graveyards are full of patriots, and his government is full of thugs. And it's inconceivable to me when I see the weak stance taken by our current administration, especially with the spirit in this room, because the spirit of the Cuban people is beyond any spirit that I've seen by any people, and I've been watching it for a long time. And we can't allow him to get away with this program of coming to this country, hiring our best consultants, hiring our best lobbyists, and all of a sudden, senators and various other people miraculously are on the side of Fidel Castro. And now the battle is almost getting tougher, and it should be a battle that would be won or almost won by now. The point is that things can turn around, and they can turn around very rapidly. I believe that you will have victory. I believe you'll have victory sooner rather than later. And you will win. You are going to win. And I'm going to be down here and I'm going to watch you win. I don't know what capacity I'll be. I'll either be the greatest developer in the country or the greatest president that you've had in a long time. I'm not sure. This trip has been very unusual. I've learned a tremendous amount. Jorge has taken me to I have met more Cubans than I knew existed. And they are great people. And now I'm friends, and I'm going to be here whenever you need me. If I could meet Castro right now, I'd have personally 2 words for him. Adios, amigo. We'll see you very soon. Thank you very much. Terrific people. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
And so you see, back in 1959, Fidel Castro led the revolution and turned Cuba communist. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, the closest the world has ever came to nuclear war. Then the special period in the 90s after the Soviet Union collapsed, when the economy tanked so hard people were eating zoo animals just to survive. For 67 straight years, the same family and the same system have been in charge. They brag about free healthcare and education, just like a certain someone in New York has been as of late. And yeah, on paper, it sounds good, but in reality, it's repression. Ration books that still exist today, half the time no internet, constant shortages of medicine and food. Oh, and not a single free bus yet. Not a one. But for Cuba, tourism was starting to boom before this latest crisis, but communism just never produced anything sustainable. That's why right now, with the lights out for the 8th night, people aren't just complaining, they're burning party offices. This all ties straight back to Trump and the pressure he's applying. He revived the Monroe Doctrine in a big way after taking down Maduro and controlling Venezuelan oil. The blockade on Cuba is total. No more Russian tankers sneaking in easy. No more cheap Venezuelan fuel keeping the lights on. Diaz-Canel was out there threatening Trump with genocide accusations just weeks ago, and now he's blinking hard. He's calling for talks, releasing prisoners, and admitting they have no other choice. Marco Rubio, our Cuban-American Secretary of State, is right there leading the charge, and the Cuban diaspora, millions of them in Miami and across the U.S., are watching this with tears in their eyes, waving American flags and saying after 67 years, this might finally be the end. The explosive plot twist right now is that while Trump is handling Iran and the bigger global chessboard, Cuba's regime is imploding from the inside. Communist Party offices on fire for the first time in years, 8 nights of total darkness, students in the streets, pot banging in Havana, and the people are no longer waiting for permission. Is this the final chapter of communism in Cuba? Or will they drag it out one more time? Either way, the dominoes are falling, and what happens next could shock the entire world. A friendly takeover, real capitalism, or full collapse? Nobody knows yet, but the momentum is unstoppable. Oh, and New York, pay attention. Here's a glimpse or a bit of a foreshadowing into your future. Seattle, you're next. But what do you all think? Is Cuba finally going to be free? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Come join the conversation with us all and my wife. The link to Better America is pinned, and we will see you over there.